All right, everyone, thanks for joining. Today, the webinar is around measuring success and the summer seasonal parking pricing update. We're super excited to have the city of Aspen with us. And before we begin, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce everyone on the call today. So from the city of Aspen, we have Mitch Oser. A little bit about Mitch. He's the Director of Parking Services in Aspen. His background includes extensive customer service, management responsibility, logistics, and budget oversight. Mitch was also chosen last year for the job as parking director because he's forward thinking about policy, technology, and planning, which we have seen lots of proof for. He comes with a background in sports, overseeing 14 retail and rental locations, and has worked closely implementing metrics to measure success for customer service and warehouse activity. He's also supervised external communications and owned and managed a $12 million sporting good business for more than 30 years in Rochester, New York. From the Smarking side, we have Kelly Klontz. Kelly's our in-house expert transportation specialist. She comes with multiple degrees in transportation from both MIT and UC Berkeley. And she also has many years of experience consulting on parking and transit issues for cities and regional agencies around the United States. And myself, my name is Diego, and I'll just be moderating the session. If anyone has any questions during the webinar, please feel free to write them in the questions box on the GoToWebinar control panel. And what we'll do is compile them, and then at the end of the webinar, we'll go ahead and answer them accordingly. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mitch.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope all is going well. We'll give you a little background on where Aspen's coming from. We're a small little town with about 3,000 residents, or 6,000 residents living in town, and as many as 30,000 people visiting us in the busy season. We have 650 on-street parking spaces that we consider to be in the core. In addition, we have 330 off-street parking spaces that are in a garage that we built many years ago. After studying our actual capacity of 650 on the street, we do core counts 3 times a year, and what we found out was that 10% of those spots are taken by handicapped placard people, and then another 10% are taken by other people that get to park for free, whether they're government vehicles, whether they're police officers, firemen, etc. So we really look at our capacity at about 550 people. We do have 2 mobile apps that we use for our customers that we put in place. We had one that we put in place about 5 years ago that was very successful, and then we had a second one about 6 months ago that cost us a little less money from our point of view to manage, plus it gave the customers the ability to cancel their time, which means if they went and registered for 3 hours and decide to leave in 2, they can actually cancel it after the second hour and they get their money back. In addition, we have an issue with service vehicles, again, in a very small town with lots of restaurants and hotels, where service vehicles need a place to park on a regular basis. And at the moment, we have an idea where we allow service vehicles to pay $4.50 for the day in order to park all day long in the core. We are thinking about changing that policy, but that's where we are today, which is a little bit of frustration because they park all day for a very little bit amount of money. We also have a very large residential area, we'll show you a map in a second, that holds about 3,000 spaces, and people there can park for $8 a day, or if they come in with a carpool with 2 people, they can get a pass that allows them to park for free, because we push extremely hard in order to make sure that we promote carpooling and don't have people coming in one vehicle. And then in addition, we hired Smarking to help us visualize and understanding the parking statistics. So that's sort of the background on how, where we stand and where we're going. Here's our map. The orange area there, as you can see, is the core, and that has 650 parking spaces. And then we have 4 different residential zones that are A, B, C, and D zones that we actually manage with LPR, license plate recognition, and GoFors to manage those 3,000 spaces, and the 16 blocks in the core, those 650 spots, we manage on foot. So we have a problem, and most people don't realize this, that we're a very large ski area and we have lots of skiers, but our biggest problem is in the summertime versus the wintertime. And the reason for the summertime having more of a problem is a couple-fold. Number one is that 70% of our customers fly in the wintertime and 30% fly in the summertime. So we have considerably more people driving in the summer, taking up parking spaces. And in addition, we're sort of a closed-off town in the wintertime where you got to drive down Route 82 and go to Glenwood to get out of town. But in the summertime, we also have Independence Pass, so we have people coming from both the east and the west, which adds to lots of congestion in town. In addition, things are very expensive in Aspen, and there's no land left. All the land has buildings on it, so that for us to be able to get additional parking garage or even parking lots would be impossible. It would cost us millions of dollars. So most people think of Aspen as having a problem in the wintertime, but we don't. We have a much bigger problem in the summertime, and people were frustrated that pretty much during our peak time between 11 and 2, there was literally no place in town for people to park. And as I met with City Council, we felt that people probably were actually driving into town, couldn't find a place to park, and drove down Valley 45 minutes and spent their money there. So we put some ideas in place to go ahead and try to alleviate the congestion, particularly in the summertime.
Okay, before Mitch continues, I just want to take a couple of minutes to emphasize some of the points he made about the seasonal demand, which is very unique to Aspen. And kind of going to nerd out on data here. What you're looking at is daily peak occupancy. And Aspen does not charge on they do charge on Saturdays, but they don't charge on Sundays or holidays. So when you see the peak occupancy drop to 0, those are Sundays. So every hump here is a full week. And this is the entire year of 2015 from January to December. And as Mitch stated, the winter demand is very high, but because everyone is driving in during the summertime, specifically July and August, are really where you have the most problems. So if you look at daily peak demand in the first 3 months of the year, you're getting about 85 to 90% occupancy, which is very high. But then it drops in April and May when it's the off-peak season for tourism. And all of a sudden, starting in June, you get crazy increasing demand. As Mitch stated, there's 650 spaces, but because about 10% of those spaces are taken up by handicap users who park for free, the practical capacity is about 550 spaces. And we see that in June, July, and August, that practical capacity is exceeded almost every single day. And so if we zoom in and look in detail there, this is starting just an example of 5 weeks in July and a little bit in August. And we're seeing every point here is Monday through Saturday. And almost every single day during the peak period, we're exceeding the practical capacity. That means in reality, many drivers are circling and looking for spaces and not able to find them, and that's causing a lot of traffic. So I'll go back to Mitch now.
Thanks, Kelly. So the first goal we set out was, in order to decrease congestion in the core, which again is the 16 main blocks, we felt we needed to free up 10% of the on-street parking spaces in order to do that. And if we did that, we felt that if we were at about 90% occupancy, that would give us 1 free parking space on every block face throughout the 16 blocks of the core. So that would allow people the opportunity to find a parking space. In general, on a busy day in Aspen and other places, we believe that 30% of the congestion in town is caused by people looking for parking places. So not only are we full in town most of the time, but we have people driving around looking for spaces, which adds to the pollution and the congestion. So if we could achieve the 90% occupancy on the streets, there would be a place for everyone to park when they come into town. Next slide there, Kelly. So we set up 4 very specific goals when we put this plan together. Number 1 was to reduce car traffic coming into Aspen. So if we could find a way to get the workers and people coming into town to do something besides drive a car, whether that's carpool, whether that's take a bus, park in what we call our intercept lot, which is about 4 miles outside of town, and bring take a free bus into town. That would help reduce traffic coming into this area. In addition, we wanted to cut down on congestion of cars into town, not only because it makes the town look crowded and adds pollution, but it makes it an uncomfortable experience. So we talked to City Council about having no more than 90% occupancy in the downtown core, and if we did that, we would call that a success. In addition, we're big believers in alternative forms of transportation in Aspen. We wanted to increase transit, carpool, pedestrian, and bicycle trips and encourage people that have to drive to town to either park in our parking garage or our intercept lot so that they were not taking up the core spots, which we believe we wanted to leave for the locals that wanted to come and spend money and the tourists that wanted to come in town and spend money. So through that, we put an implementation plan together that I went to City Council with to get this done. And we realized that we needed a multi-pronged attack in order to have that happen. So the first thing we did after some research says, okay, we're going to raise parking prices by 50% in the downtown core. So for the months of June, July, and August, I got City Council to agree to do a 3-month test to raise parking prices by 50% because we felt that that would achieve our goal of only having 90% occupancy. In addition, we had a rule that people could only park for 4 hours, but we didn't really have a way to enforce that. So we worked with LPR system to be able to be in a position to use our GoForce to drive around the core and actually look at the license plates, and then we'd go at 10:30 and then about 2:30 or 3, and that allowed us to enforce the 4-hour parking in the core because we wanted more turnover. In addition, we wanted to keep the parking prices low in any place but the core. So we did not increase pricing in the parking garage, which is $1.50 an hour, or you can buy a punch pass for $5 a day, or the residential zones, which are free if you're, again, are carpooling, or $8 a day total. So we opted not to raise the prices there to try to move more people to park in those areas. In addition, we reached out to a downtowner, which is an electric cart service that we put together with them in order to have door-to-door service and an on-demand electric shuttle service, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, that was very successful. In addition, we were instructed by City Council that the extra money, revenue we were going to bring in for the summer, which our projection was about $150,000, we did not want to put that money into the city's coffers. We didn't want to have this be what the citizens looked at as a money grab. So we put a plan together to give the extra revenue, the $150,000, back to the citizens. Some of that money went to pay for the downtowner, and some of that went to a DriveLess campaign where if people signed up to agree to drive less, we weren't specific. We were okay if somebody drove one less day a week. That would be a step in the right direction. We'll talk about this in a second, but we put a campaign together to help give the money back to those people that were doing the right thing. And then in addition, we have a WeCycle program in town, which has been in town for about 4 years, which is a shared bike program that we wanted to continue to promote, that when people did come to town, didn't have to move their cars, or if they came on a bus, they could use the WeCycle program. So when we look at pricing, just to give some people ideas, we've always had 2 goals in mind. One was to have the pricing affect where and how people park, and also to try to discourage long-term parking. So our standard rates, let's just look at the 1 hour, used to be $2 an hour, and during the summer test, which again went from June 1st going to August 31st, we decided to raise that to $3 an hour. So again, we've always charged more per hour to get people to try to park for 1 hour instead of for 4 hours. And then again, for the summer test, we decided to raise rates by 50% for the first, second, third, and fourth hour. The 30 minutes and 15-minute parking we left the same because we felt those were people that were running in and out to do their shopping or do whatever they had to do. So we left the 30 minutes for $1 both at the standard rates and the increased summer rates. So when I went to city council, people laughed at me at first saying there's no way city council is going to approve a 50% increase of parking prices in the summertime. But we felt it was very important that when we talked to council, we went specifically, and I recommend this to anybody that goes talk to their city council, that you set up some very specific metrics and ways to measure that, so that we knew what success would look like. So we just didn't go and say we want to decrease occupancy and we want to increase revenue, et cetera. We had some very specifics. And the truth is, some of these numbers we came via what we affectionately call SWAG, which is a scientifically wild ass guess. So we know that this is not always easy to come up with these numbers, but we felt it was important. So the first thing I went to city council with was we want to decrease core parking spaces occupancy by 10%. And that made sense to everybody when I said that allows us to have one free parking spot on every block face. Then in addition, I knew that the revenue would go up, so I was hoping to only increase my revenue by 25%, because if we increased our revenue by more than 25%, then we were not, then we weren't moving people to park in either the residential area or the parking garage or taking the bus. In addition, we wanted to increase the turnover of vehicles parking in the downtown core. There I did not have a specific measurement for, but was very important. We wanted to increase the occupancy in our parking garage by 15%. It does fill in the summertime for about an hour or two between 11 and 1. So our hope was to have it filled all day long if we could do that. In addition, we wanted to increase the number of vehicles carpooling by 10%, figuring that if we raised the price, more people would be more apt to carpool together. And then we have an intercept lot that again is about 4 miles outside of town, where people can park for free and bring a free bus into town that also gets to go. We have specific bus lanes on 82, which allowed people to be able to come into town faster on the bus. It takes about 25 to 30 minutes during the peak season to come to town in the car, but in the bus it takes a little bit more than 12 minutes. So again, it has very specific metrics. So if you look at the first metric, the goal was to decrease core parking occupancy by 10%. And it was very important to remember that when I put this together, I looked at day to day versus date to date, because I wanted to compare a Monday to a Monday and a Tuesday to Tuesday. So 2016 starts on June 1st, which was a Wednesday, which made us compare that to June 3rd. And as you can see by this graph, there was only one day in July where we exceeded parking last year, and then a couple days in August, and August has been fantastic. So for the first two and a half months, we did decrease the core parking occupancy by 12.5%. So my goal was 10%, and in fact, we achieved 12.5%, which was very noticeable. Everybody from city council and even people in town that were mad at me because I raised prices by 50% said, wow, we can notice that there's less congestion in town and I can find a parking space. Goal number 2 was talking about turnover. And you can see that our goal was to try to increase turnover and try to get more people to park for 1 hour or 2 hours versus parking all day long. So 5% more people were paying for 5% more people were paying for 1 hour this year from last year, and considerably less people were paying for 4 hours, and that has continued to go. Our average stay is about 101 minutes right now, which is really good. So we've definitely seen people come into town, pay for an hour or two, and get out when before they used to pay for 4 hours. Then let's talk specifically about the success or failure of this activity, and purely by luck, it was very successful almost all measurements. So again, we talked before that our first goal was to decrease occupancy by 10%, and you can see that we were actually down 12.5%, which is actually down 20,558 spots for the first 2.5 months, which is fantastic. Our goal was to have the revenue up 25%, and in fact, our revenue was up 26.1%, up over $132,000. And by the time we get done through the end of August, we're going to be closer to $175,000 increase in revenue. And the reason we're a little bit above the 25% was that we moved the customers right on June 1st when the increase in price came. We moved the employees and the people parking in town right away, and a lot of the tourists didn't show up until the third week of June. So, but close to, just a little over 1% more than we projected was considered a success in our eyes and City Council's eyes. Our garage occupancy, our goal was a 15% increase, and in fact, we ended up being up 17.1%, which so far is up a little over 3,000 cars over this 2.5 month stay. We have a garage pass that allowed people to park in the parking garage for $5 a day. Our expectation, we would sell more of those because people would start parking there, and our goal was 10%, and in fact, we're up 11.3%, which is 780 cars, more people buying the punch passes. We also have the intercept lot we talked about where we have cars parked there and then take the free bus in. We do count that lot 3 times a day. So first thing in the morning at about 8 o'clock, then about 11:30, and then about 5:15. And in fact, the intercept lot, the goal was a 20% increase. And in fact, we actually had a 30.4% increase, which is 4,700 cars, which again, we consider to be a huge success. And then the carpool passes, these are people that go to an airport kiosk that we have that if they have 2 people in their car, they're allowed to get a park for free in the residential area. Our goal was a 10% increase. This was the only goal we did not achieve, and we were at a 9.3% increase, which is a little over 1,000 cars. And then we didn't think about this, but we also sell day passes for $8 a day, where people can park in the residential area for that $8. And in fact, those passes were up 73%, which is almost 2,800 cars that are now parking in the residential area for $8 a day versus the core at $21 for 4 hours. So we considered, again, that to be a very success. So we definitely moved customers and employees. We felt that about 60% of the people parking in the core on an average day were actually employees that were working at the restaurants and the retail stores. And we wanted to move those from the core into the residential area or the parking garage, and this shows very well that that was achieved. In addition, as I said before, that we've learned over the years that one thing is not going to solve the problem. Just raising parking prices 50% is probably not going to achieve our results. It will help, but it won't achieve the results. So we felt we needed to take a multimodal approach towards managing parking, where raising pricing is just one of it. We wanted to expand or keep the affordable options so that people could still park in the residential area for free or for $8 or a parking garage. And we wanted to make other forms of travel easier and more convenient. So again, the first thing we did was to hire the downtowner, which we did again as a 3-month test. And just Monday night, the City Council agreed to give him a year extension. So this downtowner will exist through September 15th of 2017. And the whole goal was to get cars out of the core and alleviate parking congestion and traffic congestion. And we really wanted to do that by reducing the amount of cars in the core. The idea of this downtowner was that it would also help complement our fixed route bus service. We have the best rural bus service in the United States in Aspen, run by RAFTA, the Roaring Fork Transportation Association, which has done a great job. So when we put the downtowner in place, the first thing it was on demand, so that it would go around and pick people up directly at their houses, directly at a restaurant, wherever they wanted to go. And there was an app that the downtowner put together, which is fantastic, very easy to use, with lots of information that people use. We're running right now the downtowner 7 days a week. It goes from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. So it starts right about 11 o'clock when the tourists start showing up. And then we end at 11 o'clock at night when we feel people are done hanging out at the restaurants. We have 5 vehicles, 4 vehicles that are regular vehicles. These are all electric. 1 driver and manages and holds 5 people. And then we also had 1 ADA vehicle, which has 1 driver and could hold up to 4 people. The service is 100% free. Aspen at this stage is fitting the bill. In other towns, a lot of it is is paid for by advertising on the vehicles, but Aspen at this stage does not want to do advertising. They'd rather just promote the downtowner. So again, it was free, and the hope is that tips would be given to the drivers, and that's how the drivers were paid. And again, the mobile app, when you go on the app, you tell them where you are. You'll get right away, it'll tell you how long the wait is. The goal was to keep the wait less than 5 minutes. Was, again, extremely easy to use. And City Council at first agreed to do a 3-month pilot, which again has been extended. So for the first 2.5 months, we've had 10,377 passengers, way above our expectations. That's a lot of people that this vehicle was moving around. In addition, they did almost 4,400 rides. The average wait time was 5 minutes and 15 seconds. The busiest times, which turned out to be perfect, whereas 11 a.m. to noon, which is when we think a lot of the tourists show up. So we think a lot of them were parking in the parking garage and other areas and getting on the downtowner to get into town. In addition, it was very busy from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. So we have a very big restaurant community in this town with lots and lots of very good restaurants. So we believe we were busy from 6 to 7 so that people could get driven directly from their house or from their hotel to the restaurants. And then from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. was also very busy when we feel people were on their, wanted to get back home after eating all day long or all evening. So not surprising, those are busiest hours. And then our cost per passenger, as it turns out, is $6.25, which is right about in the middle. Some of the bus routes we have are $5 per passenger, and we have other bus routes that are as high as $15 per passenger. So $6.25 I consider to be reasonably priced. I talked before about our DriveLess program. Again, our goal was to try to get people to pledge to drive less. And like I said, if we were okay if they just drove one less day a week. Our goal was they would drive 4 or 5 days less a week, but at this stage we'd be happy if they drove one less day. If you signed up for this, you signed up online, you would get a goodie bag that had a bunch of different prizes in it, including flashlights, water bottles, and things like that. And then part of our goal when City Council said, okay, we're okay doing this, we want to give the money back to the people that are doing the right thing versus putting the $150,000 in our back pocket. So we set up a reward program where people could sign up for one of 4 rewards. The first one is they could get a $40 gift card that would be good at any of the bike shops in town, 5 different bike shops. They could also get a $40 bus pass. They could get a $50 season pass from WeCycle, or they could get a $25 waiver for Car2Go application fee. And Car2Go is a service that we have where we have 6 vehicles in town where people essentially can rent it to go up and down Valley or do short trips, and it's a $25 fee to sign up for it. Much to our shock, to show the success was twofold. One was that we had over 800 participants sign up for this. In addition, WeCycle was our #1 product that people took. 351 people took the WeCycle. We thought everybody would take the $40 gift card because it was like a $40 cash. But in fact, WeCycle was #1 at 351 people taking that, 319 people taking the tune-ups, and 142 people taking the bus pass. So again, made the citizens very happy and made City Council happy because again, we were giving the money back to the participants and the people that were doing the right thing. So a quick overview that I'd recommend whenever you want to do something. We were very lucky to have a City Council that was willing to do a 3-month test on the 50% increase in price. So that did 2 things. One is it allowed me when citizens came and complained to me that how can you dare raise the price for 50%, I gave you the ability to say to them, look, it's just a 3-month test for June, July, and August. If it doesn't work, we'll can it and won't move forward with it. In addition, it gave us the ability that if it did not work as well as it did, it would have given us the ability to make some minor adjustments and raise the price 30% or 60% and do some other things. So I feel very special that our City Council will do tests, and I would recommend it to any of you, that instead of saying, hey, let's put this in place and it's in place for the next 10 years, that if you can do some type of a test that it will work extremely well, easier to sell to the citizens of the town. In addition, I think you need to have, again, specific objectives and measurements. So it was easy when I went back to City Council on August 1st to give them the results to say our goal was 10% decrease in occupancy, and in fact, it was 12.1%. So if you tell them up front what the objectives and the measurements are, it's really easy at the end to look at the citizens and City Council and say, are we successful or we are not? In addition, the statistics that I got from Smarking daily really has made me a lot smarter. I'm looking at 5 or 6 different metrics every single day, and it's really made it easier for me to understand what people are actually doing on the street. I do walk around every day, I do see, but there's nothing like looking at the numbers in black and white every single morning. What did yesterday look like? In addition, when you do these kinds of things, community outreach is very important. And that's one of the reasons that I've been successful in this job. You have to go out and talk to people. So when we put this plan together, it got approved in April, and it went on June 1st. I spent the whole month of May talking to citizens, restaurants, retailers, and the large employers in town, explaining what our goal was, what our objective was, and went and talked to them face to face. In addition, I learned a long time ago that media is very important. We do have 2 free newspapers in this town that everybody reads, and I worked with them very closely to get out press releases and articles about the downtown or about the DriveLess campaign and about the increase in pricing, and that allowed us to control the message. If you let the editors of the paper or the editorials control the message, then you lose control. But by spending the whole month of May, I bet we had an article at least twice a week talking about any number of the things that we're doing this summer. It allowed us to control the message. In addition, again, just raising parking prices wasn't going to solve the problem. It's going to help, but we took a 5-prong attack towards this, between the DriveLess, working with WeCycle, keeping the prices the same in the parking garage, et cetera, that it was the whole picture that worked. Yes, raising prices definitely was probably the major factor, but everything else allowed it to be a major success. And then in addition, again, we're lucky in Aspen that I get lots of revenue from people paying the machines correctly, the meters on the street. So therefore, we have plenty of revenue coming in. So therefore, the $150,000 we hope to raise, we wanted to give back to the community, again, which we did, and was very well received with the 800 people that signed up for DriveLess and the amount of people using the downtowner. And then the last thing on that part is that all the numbers look great, but I looked at myself, as Diego said from the beginning, I'm a retailer by heart, been in the retailer business for over 40 years. If I did all of this, and we cut down congestion in the core, which we did, but the retail business and the retail sales tax went down, it would have been a failure. Because if I moved too many people out of town or upset everybody and business didn't stay robust, it would not have worked. So for the month of June, our sales tax revenue was up 20%. And I can tell you right now, the year before was a record June. So at a 20% increase, it was through the roof. If we had not moved these cars around, there's no way we could have had a 20% increase in sales tax. And July, I won't have for another week or so, but my gut feel is that July is going to be closer to a 30 or 40% increase in revenue. So the retailers who looked me in the eye and told me, you know what, Mitch, you're going to kill my business, you're raising prices, you're doing this. I said, do me a favor, come talk to me in August and tell me what you think then. And most of them have come to me and said, well, sorry to say, but you were right that you did move people around, but all it did was increase the amount of people spending money in my store. So we call that a gigantic success. And then lastly, unfortunately, when you have success, you cannot sit on your laurels, and City Council is looking at what we're going to do next. As you can see by this last graph here, you can see, I mean, it's a beautifully shaped graph, but you can see how busy we are from noon to 4. And again, what I learned from Smarking from the beginning was that 2 o'clock is my peak occupancy every day. So what we learned is how to, what hours we're very busy and how we might change the pricing. We also learned that Mondays are our slowest day by far, so we may charge less money on Mondays than the rest of the week. In addition, we found out that August was considerably busier than we expected, and therefore we didn't move as many cars as we'd hoped, but June, July was great. So I know that City Council's looking for me to come back to them in January with a plan of, okay, Mitch, you did a great job. moving cars out of the core, doing everything you said you were going to do. What's next? And that's what I'm going to work on over the next 3 months, is to figure out what to present to City Council and how can we really do dynamic pricing and change pricing by day, of week, by month, and by hour.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mitch. I really appreciate it. We have a couple questions coming in. The first one is, since you're relatively new to the parking industry, what has surprised you most about this industry?
Let's see. Two things. One is how big the industry is. That's the first thing I can say. I mean, you think of parking as a small thing, but when you go to any of the seminars or you go to any of the shows, you realize how big it is. And what I forgot about was how big the universities are. I mean, when you think about parking, you mostly think about, I park in this city, where do I park? But I really started thinking about, universities and how big universities are. And what my key team told me when I got here is that we're much more like a university than we are a city, because when you only have 650 parking spaces in the core with 6,000 residents and 30,000 visitors, we are very, very much more like a university than we are a city.
Awesome. And then another question is around your mobile payments. So the question is, you have two different types of mobile payment systems. Which ones are they, and why did you choose to keep both?
Okay, so we have a Way to Park was the one that we just added, and what's the other one?
Pay by
Pay by phone. Pay by phone. Thank you. Sorry. And the reason we decided to keep both of them was twofold. One, as I talked to lots of other people in the parking world, particularly people from Europe, what I found was that in Europe, a lot of the cities have 4 or 5 different pay by phone systems. And what we're going to look at is, because we have so many tourists that come to town and a lot of second homeowners, Dallas, Texas is a big place. A lot of people come to Aspen from, Chicago, New York City, LA, and San Francisco. Long term, my goal would be to have 5 or 6 different options, and I want the same options that my tourists and my second homeowners are using in the town where they live. So if they're already using, let's just say, Way to Park in San Francisco, then it's easy when they come to Aspen to just change San Francisco to Aspen in the city, and then all of a sudden they don't have to put any of the other information in. So I would hope a year from now we do another webinar like this, and we're talking about having 4 or 5 different pay-by-phone systems.
That's fantastic. Mitch, I'll say this much. From the Smarking side, we're hearing the same exact trend, where they really want to give more options for that reason. Once there's comfort with a certain mobile payment provider, they just want to use that anywhere they go. Follow-up question. Right. Did you have to raise enforcement fines to help achieve these goals?
That's a great question. So 2 things happened. One is we have not raised parking fines, but that is something that I'm putting together. I don't know how it works in other cities, but in Aspen, I get my direction from City Council, and parking rates can get approved by City Council, but parking fines has to get approved by the judge in town. So I'm just in the process of putting together new prices for the fines, because again, as you raise, right now we charge $30 if somebody doesn't pay the meter or stays overtime. Well, let's see, you can pay $21 to park for 4 hours. For an extra $9, I'll take my chance. So we're going to have to raise the prices. The other thing we did, which met with mixed reaction, but we did it anyway, and that's that if somebody parked for more than 4 hours, or if they didn't pay the meter, I gave them a $30 ticket, and then if 5 hours later they had not moved, I gave them another $30 ticket. So they were actually getting $60 worth of ticket. But yes, big picture, you're going to have, if you're going to raise your parking prices, then you're going to have to raise the fines. Otherwise, the people get too smart and say, hey, it's not that much more money to pay the fine than it is to pay for parking.
Gotcha. And then another question we have here is, do employers pay for employee parking, either in garages or residential areas?
That comes and goes. Some do, and what we promote first is, why don't you have the employers have buy bus passes for their employees. And we do have a fair amount of businesses in town that do buy the bus passes, but we do have some employers in town that will pay either for residential parking or the parking garage for their employees. But we promote to try to do it through the buses first.
Awesome. And I think this is a clarification, but it's a question coming in. Did you say the city issued day parking passes for the residential area?
So people can pay in the residential area in two ways. We do have some meters in the residential area, but mostly just in the first 2 blocks of the residential area. So they can go and pay via the meter. They can also pay by phone, and they can also come to either the parking office or to our kiosk out by the airport and buy a parking pass for $8.
Gotcha. And how did the residents react to increased parking in the neighborhood?
Let's see, I had a resident come and talk to me the other day that says, Mitch, you've done a fantastic job turning my neighborhood into a parallel parking lot, quote unquote. So that was something that I had not anticipated. And I'm glad someone asked that question. We had not anticipated where people would park. I was hoping more people would take the bus. Right. What appears to happen, as you can see by the numbers, a lot more people are going to the parking garage, and we have definitely filled the residential area considerably more than we have in the past. So we have had a few complaints about that, and we're working on that. And we're actually thinking about maybe turning the residential area next summer into 2 zones, a zone that maybe is reserved either a higher price, maybe it's reserved for people that live there, and then further out, people can park for $8. And we're just playing with that and trying to come up with some ideas. But definitely a few complaints that all we've done is filled the residentials with parkers.
And here's a question I had, but someone also asked it. How many residents took the shuttle and left their cars at home and reduced the parking demand? Were we able to capture any any data on that piece?
Yes, in fact, the area that we call the West End, which is our most populated area, that's a little bit outside of the core, but not that far out. We know that we had about 6,000 rides out of that area where people from the West End told us they left their cars at home and took the shuttle into town. So 6,000 of the little over 10,000 came from one area of town called the West End. Mostly the higher end houses, and we know a lot of people definitely drove from there in the past and have now decided to take the shuttle.
That's fantastic. Well, I know it's 11:45, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Mitch, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day just to share with everyone some of your findings. Thanks so much. And for everyone attending, thank you guys. This is our 4th webinar in a series of 4 webinars to wrap up the summer. I know some of you on the line made it to all 4 of them, so thank you for that. All attendees present today will be sending over a recording of this webinar as well as a case study. We post a lot about how cities and data and things interesting that they're doing, and so we have our blog on the page right now, and so feel free to go visit the blog if you want to read more. Mitch, thank you so much. With that, I'll go ahead and wrap it up. I appreciate it. Kelly, thank you, and we look forward to doing maybe one in a year, showing any new results based on your new approach to city council. So thank you guys very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks everyone. It's just a laugh.